Our first mistake is failing to properly address health care considerations. Now, how many of you remember hearing about Terri Schiavo and the terrible problems that poor family endured in Florida about 5 or 6 years ago? Remember, the husband wanted to pull the plug on his wife, who was basically comatose, and the parents wanted to prolong her life, and the two of them fought in every court between the state of Florida and Washington, D.C., including the Supreme Court, to the great mental anguish and financial expense of everybody involved. And that was because they didn't have an advance directive. Now, this little tidbit is interesting because it points out the reality of this problem we might all face. Think about the effect you're going to have on your loved one if you're in an end-of-life situation, and 85% of the time you're going to be in the hospital, and they have to make this decision about whether to cease respiration, tube feeding, that kind of thing, without any inkling of what your wishes are. You know, that's probably the hardest decision that any of us would ever have to face. The delays, the costs, the emotional suffering. There's a solution to this problem that's relatively easy. It's called an Oregon Advance Directive. And in an advance directive, you have the opportunity to designate a person to make those decisions for you. You're authorizing someone to do that. Now, it's not just an end-of-life decision they can make. They can also make a decision about emergency treatment that you might need. You know, a doctor is not going to do experimental or high-risk treatment without somebody signing off on it in this day and age. And you can imagine the doctor running into the room saying, we've got to do this treatment, but it's high risk. You know, who can sign for this? And if nobody is present, then the doctor is going to be forced to have the hospital's legal department run down to the probate judge and get a court order to authorize it. With an Oregon Advance Directive, you empower anybody, spouse, friend, child, neighbor, to make that decision. They hand the doctor that directive, they take the risk, and maybe it saves a life. Same thing happens at the end of life. The person you name as your agent in this directive will not only have your authority to instruct that the plug be pulled or not, they will also know what your wishes are. And in the directive, there's 5 or 6 different scenarios dealing with end-of-life situations that you actually outline your wishes for.
Is it good in other states if you happen to be in another state or country?
Yes, it should be valid because the states tend to recognize directives from other states. Yes. Now, you might see a reference up there to DocuBank. And DocuBank is a service that my clients are participating in, and they will issue you a card like this that I carry in my wallet. And this card, if something were to happen to you, would be found by first responders. And what they do is you might see this red lettering here up front. They will telephone that 1-800 number, and your advance directive has already been faxed into DocuBank. And once this number is telephoned, anywhere in the world, 24/7, this advance directive will be faxed to the agency that finds you or the hospital that you land in so that they'll have your directives. It also contains emergency contact information, allergies, medical conditions, and the name, address, and phone number of your physician. So there's a lot we can do in estate planning to deal with lifetime situations, not just end-of-life situations.